Snow fell hard across northern Wyoming, thick white sheets twisting through the pine trees like the sky was trying to erase the world beneath it. The mountains beyond Black Hollow Ridge had disappeared hours ago. Roads were buried. Telephone poles leaned beneath the wind. Even the forest sounded different during storms like this. Softer, sweeter, dangerous. Somewhere beneath that endless white silence, a man was still alive. Former Navy SEAL Logan Mercer could barely feel his hands anymore. Cold had become something deeper than pain. It lived inside his bones now, slow and heavy, dragging him toward sleep. His wrists burned against the plastic restraints, cutting into his skin. Snow packed against his chest each time the wind shifted overhead. Tape covered his mouth so tightly he could barely breathe through his nose. He tried to move again. Nothing. Above him, boots crunched faintly through the snow, then silence. Whoever buried him wanted the mountain to finish the job. Logan closed his eyes for a second, fighting the darkness pulling at him from somewhere deep inside his head. He'd survived cat zones overseas, survived drowning drills, survived things most people would never understand. But buried under 6 feet of Wyoming snow? That wasn't how he thought it would end. Then he heard it, a bark. Distant, sharp, closer than before. Claire Bennett hated silence, because silence gave memories room to breathe. At 32, the FBI agent had learned there were some sounds that never really left a person. Gunfire in stairwells, panic over a radio, the trembling breath of someone begging not to die. 3 months ago, an operation in Denver had collapsed in under 4 minutes. A hostage dead, an informant missing, 2 agents injured, and Claire still waking up every night replaying the moment she chose the wrong door. Officially, she was on administrative recovery leave. Unofficially, the Bureau wanted her out of sight until people stopped asking questions. So she drove north, far north. The cabin had belonged to her grandfather once, tucked near Black Hollow Ridge where cell service disappeared and people minded their own business. The place smelled like cedar smoke and old coffee. Normally she loved it here. Tonight it felt like exile. The windshield wipers scraped across ice while snow swirled through the headlights of her SUV. Beside her, Atlas lifted his massive head from the passenger seat. The German Shepherd was 8 years old now, his muzzle beginning to silver around the edges. But his eyes still carried that sharp working dog focus. Atlas had served beside Claire on search operations for years before the Bureau forced her into leave. He wasn't technically supposed to be with her. Claire brought him anyway. "Easy, boy," she murmured. Atlas stared into the trees. His ears twitched. The dog gave a low growl. Claire noticed immediately. Atlas didn't growl without reason. The SUV rolled slowly down the narrow service road, cutting through the forest. Snow piled high along both sides. Pine branches sagged overhead beneath the storm. Then Atlas suddenly stood. A deep bark exploded from his chest. Claire tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "What is it?" Atlas barked again. Then he lunged toward the window. Claire hit the brakes. The SUV slid sideways slightly before stopping near a stretch of untouched snow beside the road. For a second there was only wind. Then Atlas began whining. Not aggressive, urgent. Claire opened the door. Freezing air slammed into her instantly. Atlas jumped out before she could stop him. "Atlas!" The shepherd ignored her. He bounded through knee-deep snow toward a cluster of pines 20 yards from the road. Claire grabbed her flashlight and followed, boots sinking hard beneath the surface. The wind cut across her face like broken glass. Atlas stopped suddenly. Then he started digging. Snow flew behind him in violent bursts. Claire's heartbeat slowed. Training kicked in. The dog wasn't playing. He found something. "Atlas!" The shepherd barked once. Then Claire heard it, knocking, faint, weak under the snow. Every muscle in her body tightened. She dropped to her knees immediately and started digging with gloved hands beside the dog. "Hey!" she shouted. "Can you hear me?" Another weak knock. Alive. Dear God. Snow packed beneath her fingernails while Atlas tore through the drift beside her. Within seconds, Claire uncovered black fabric, a shoulder, then a face. A man. Tape over his mouth. Skin pale blue from the cold. Claire ripped the tape away. The man gasped violently. "Easy, easy," Claire said quickly. His eyes opened halfway, military. Even half frozen, she recognized it immediately. The posture, the haircut, the scars. Atlas kept barking into the trees. Claire looked up sharply. The forest beyond them stood dark beneath the snowfall, watching. For one terrifying second, she thought she saw movement between the pines. Then nothing. Wind. Snow. Silence. She cut the restraints from the man's wrists. "Stay with me," she ordered. The stranger tried speaking, but his jaw barely moved. Claire leaned closer. "Who did this to you?" His lips trembled. One word escaped. "Run."
Are the
Then
roads
his eyes
completely
rolled
closed
back.
off yet?
Black Hollow
Almost.
Medical Center
We
looked more
barely
like
made
a
it from
storm
the county
shelter than a
line.
hospital. The small
All right,
building
bring the
sat at the
plasma
edge of
straight
town,
back.
surrounded by snowbanks nearly 6 feet high. Emergency lights reflected against the falling snow, while nurses hurried through the entrance carrying supplies. Claire stayed beside the unconscious man while doctors worked. Atlas refused to leave the hallway. The dog sat rigid near the operating room doors, staring at everyone who passed. A young nurse paused nearby. "He's beautiful," she whispered. Claire glanced at Atlas. "He's stubborn." The nurse smiled nervously before lowering her voice. "Sheriff's asking questions." Of course he was. Claire rubbed exhaustion from her eyes. She hadn't even reached the cabin yet. Now she was standing inside a rural hospital beside a half-frozen stranger buried alive in the mountains. Nothing about this felt random. Sheriff Daniel Holt entered the hallway a moment later. Mid-50s, heavy coat dusted with snow, weathered face, the kind of man who looked permanently tired. "Agent Bennett," he said. Claire stiffened slightly. "I'm technically off duty." "Funny thing about trouble," Holt replied. "Doesn't care much about vacation schedules." He handed her a paper cup of coffee. Claire accepted it quietly. "Doctors say your mystery man has severe hypothermia, fractured ribs, dehydration, and signs of blunt force trauma." Holt studied her carefully. "You know him?" Claire shook her head. "No, military though, definitely." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Road crews found a burned SUV off Route 16 this morning. Plates came back stolen." Claire felt something tighten inside her chest. "Any bodies?" "No." Atlas suddenly stood. A low growl rolled from deep inside the shepherd's throat. Claire turned. A man wearing dark maintenance coveralls walked down the hallway, pushing a janitor cart. Nothing unusual, except Atlas stared at him like he recognized danger. The man kept his head lowered. Too lowered. Claire watched him carefully. He disappeared around the corner. Atlas continued growling. Sheriff Holt frowned. "What's with the dog? Atlas doesn't like him. Maybe he smells bleach." Maybe. But Claire didn't believe that. Not even a little. An hour later, the storm worsened. Hospital windows rattled beneath the wind, while snow swallowed the parking lot outside. Claire sat beside the unconscious stranger's room, scrolling through missing persons databases on her phone. No matches. No recent alerts. Nothing. Atlas rested near the door but remained alert. The stranger finally stirred close to midnight. Claire stood immediately. His eyes opened slowly. Gray eyes. Sharp even through exhaustion. Military eyes. The kind that constantly measured exits. He looked at Claire first, then Atlas. Confusion crossed his face. "Hospital," Claire said softly. "You're safe." The man winced, trying to sit up. "Don't," Claire warned. His voice came rough. "How long?" "Couple hours since we found you." The man looked toward the window. Fear flickered across his face so quickly most people would have missed it. Claire didn't. "Who buried you?" Silence. Then, "You need to leave." Claire folded her arms. "Not happening. If they know you found me." A crash echoed somewhere down the hallway. Atlas exploded to his feet, barking. Claire turned instantly. Voices shouted outside the room. Then came the sound of running footsteps. Sheriff Holt appeared in the doorway. "Power generator just went down," he said. "Backup lights only." As if on cue, the hospital lights flickered. Darkness swallowed the hallway for half a second. Then emergency red lights flooded the corridor. Atlas growled again. The stranger's face drained of color. "They're here," he whispered. Claire looked at him sharply. "Who?" But before he could answer, the fire alarm suddenly screamed through the building. And somewhere beyond the flashing red hallway lights, a gunshot echoed. Atlas barked violently. Sheriff Holt reached for his weapon. Claire's pulse slammed against her ribs. Because deep down, she realized something terrifying. Whoever buried this man in the mountains had just found him again. The gunshot echoed through Black Hollow Medical Center, like the building itself had cracked apart. Nurses screamed somewhere down the hallway. Emergency lights flashed red across the walls. Atlas barked violently beside the hospital bed, fur raised high along his back. Sheriff Holt already had his weapon drawn. "Stay inside this room," he ordered. Claire ignored him. The former FBI agent moved toward the doorway instantly, pulse hammering against her ribs. Training took over before fear had time to settle in. Another loud crash echoed from the lobby, glass breaking. Then footsteps, running fast. Atlas lunged ahead of her. "Atlas, heel!" The shepherd slowed but remained alert, ears forward, eyes locked toward the dark hallway. The unconscious fear on Logan Mercer's face disturbed Claire more than the gunshot, because men like him did not scare easily, and right now he looked terrified. "Who are they?" Claire demanded. Logan swallowed painfully. "Contractors," he whispered. "Contractors for who?" But before he could answer, the hallway lights flickered again, then a man screamed. Sheriff Holt moved first. Claire followed close behind. The hospital corridor looked like something from a nightmare under the flashing emergency lights. Smoke drifted near the ceiling from the electrical room farther down the hall. Nurses crouched near the reception desk crying while patients were rushed into locked rooms. Then Claire saw him, the janitor. The same maintenance worker Atlas had reacted to earlier, only now he wasn't pushing a cleaning cart. He held a pistol. The man turned, saw Claire, and ran. "Stop!" Holt shouted. The gunman fired once. The bullet shattered a window beside them. Atlas exploded forward. The shepherd tore down the hallway with terrifying speed. Claire sprinted after him. The gunman crashed through an emergency exit into the blizzard outside. Snow and freezing wind slammed through the open door instantly. Atlas reached him halfway across the parking lot. The dog hit the man like a missile. Both disappeared into the snow. The pistol fired wildly, once, twice. Then silence. Claire reached them seconds later. Atlas stood over the man, growling low in his throat. The gunman struggled beneath him, blood spreading across his shoulder where the dog had bitten deep through the coat. Sheriff Holt arrived breathless. "Jesus Christ!" Claire kicked the pistol away. The man smiled at her, actually smiled. That frightened her more than anything. "You're already dead," he said softly. Then he bit down hard. Claire grabbed him too late. Foam spilled from the corners of his mouth. Cyanide. Within seconds, his body went limp beneath the snow. Atlas backed away slowly. The storm swallowed the parking lot around them. Quiet, cold, endless. Claire stared at the dead man's face. No ID, no fingerprints in the database. Professional. Which meant Logan Mercer hadn't been buried by random criminals. This was something bigger. Much bigger. An hour later, the storm trapped everyone inside the hospital. Roads closed. Power unstable. Wind screaming against the walls. Sheriff Holt posted deputies at every entrance while Claire sat across from Logan's hospital bed. Atlas rested near the door but refused to sleep. Logan looked exhausted. Bruises darkened the side of his face beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, but his eyes remained sharp. Watchful. "Start talking," Claire said quietly. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally, 3 weeks ago my team intercepted a weapons shipment near the Canadian border. His voice remained low and controlled. Officially, it was supposed to be a simple surveillance operation. Claire listened carefully. It wasn't simple. Logan gave a humorless smile. "Nothing is simple when federal contractors get involved." The room felt colder suddenly. "Go on," Claire said. "We found evidence someone inside a private defense company was selling military technology overseas. Names, offshore accounts, shipment routes." Logan looked toward the snow-covered window. "My team leader reported it up the chain. 2 days later, he disappeared." Claire felt her stomach tighten. "The company? Helix Dynamics." Sheriff Holt frowned from across the room. "Never heard of it." "Most people haven't," Logan replied. "That's the point." Atlas suddenly lifted his head. The dog stared toward the hallway again. Claire noticed immediately. "What is it?" Then she heard it too. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Sheriff Holt reached for his revolver. The footsteps stopped. Silence followed. Claire moved carefully toward the doorway. Empty hallway. But at the far end near the stairwell she caught movement. A shadow disappearing. Someone else was inside the hospital, watching. By morning the storm finally weakened. Gray light spread across Black Hollow like the world had survived something terrible. Claire hadn't slept. Neither had Atlas. Logan insisted they leave before whoever attacked the hospital returned with reinforcements. Sheriff Holt reluctantly agreed. There's an old ranger station near Silver Lake, Logan explained while pulling on a borrowed winter coat. My team stored emergency backup equipment there. Claire crossed her arms. And you think this place has answers? I know it does. The drive north felt wrong from the beginning. Too quiet, roads buried beneath fresh snow, trees bending in the wind. Atlas sat rigid in the back seat watching the forest constantly. Claire drove while Logan scanned the road behind them. Nobody spoke much. Tension filled the SUV like smoke. Halfway to Silver Lake, Atlas barked sharply. Claire looked into the rearview mirror. A black truck appeared through the snow behind them, following. Logan cursed softly. They found us. The truck accelerated. Claire pressed harder on the gas. Snow sprayed behind the tires. The road curved dangerously along frozen cliffs overlooking the lake below. The black truck closed distance fast. Then came the first impact. Metal slammed against the rear bumper. Atlas barked violently. Claire fought the steering wheel. Hold on! The truck hit them again. Harder. The SUV fishtailed across the icy road. Logan grabbed the dashboard. Bridge ahead! Claire saw through the storm. An old wooden bridge crossing the frozen edge of Silver Lake. Too narrow. Too unstable. The truck rammed them a third time. The SUV spun sideways. Claire lost control. Everything happened at once. Wood splintering, glass exploding, Atlas barking, ice cracking beneath them. Then freezing black water swallowed the vehicle. Cold, unbearable cold. Claire's eyes flew open underwater. The SUV sank nose first beneath the ice. Water flooded around her legs. Atlas struggled in the back. Logan kicked at the shattered windshield. Claire's lungs screamed already. The lake above them looked like fractured gray glass. Logan finally broke the windshield completely. Freezing water surged through the SUV. Claire shoved Atlas first. The Shepherd fought through the opening. Then Logan pulled Claire free just before the vehicle disappeared deeper beneath the lake. They surfaced beneath broken ice, gasping violently. Wind howled across Silver Lake. The black truck stopped above them near the shattered bridge. Two armed men stepped out. One raised a rifle. Claire saw it happen. So did Atlas. The German Shepherd lunged through the freezing water toward shore. Atlas, no! Gunfire exploded. Snow burst beside the dog. Atlas kept going. The Shepherd hit the shoreline seconds later and attacked the nearest gunman with savage force. The second shooter turned toward him. Logan fired first, a hidden pistol in his coat. One shot. Direct hit. The man collapsed into the snow. Claire dragged herself onto the frozen shoreline, shaking uncontrollably from the cold. Atlas limped back toward them. Blood stained the Shepherd's front leg. Claire dropped beside him instantly. No, no, no. Atlas whined softly. The bullet had grazed his shoulder. Not fatal, but enough to make Claire's chest tighten painfully. Logan looked toward the surviving attacker struggling beneath the snow. Then his expression changed. Recognition. Victor Hale, Logan whispered. The injured gunman smiled weakly. You should have stayed buried. Claire stared. You know him? Logan nodded slowly. Former intelligence contractor. Helix Dynamics security director. Victor coughed blood into the snow. You have no idea how deep this goes. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Sheriff Holt, back up. Victor heard them too, and suddenly laughed. Doesn't matter anymore, he whispered. Then his body went still. Snow drifted across his face. Silence returned to Silver Lake. Quiet. Heavy, like the mountain itself had finally exhaled. 3 months later, spring reached Black Hollow slowly. Snow melted from rooftops. Pine trees swayed green again. The frozen lake finally thawed. Federal investigations buried Helix Dynamics beneath criminal indictments, classified hearings and arrests, stretching across 3 states. Claire Bennett turned down the Bureau's offer to return. Some doors inside a person closed permanently. Others opened. The cabin no longer felt like exile. It felt like peace. Atlas recovered fully, though the silver around his muzzle seemed brighter now beneath the morning sun. Older, wiser, still stubborn, Logan visited often. Sometimes they sat on the porch in silence, watching wind move through the trees. Neither of them needed to explain certain things anymore. People who survive darkness together rarely do. One evening, Claire knelt beside Atlas near the edge of the property while sunset burned gold across the mountains. The Shepherd rested his head gently against her shoulder. Not a weapon, not a tool. Family. Claire smiled quietly. Because in the end, it wasn't training or weapons or government agencies that saved them. It was loyalty, instinct, and one German shepherd who refused to stop digging beneath the snow. Sometimes miracles don't arrive loudly. Sometimes they come with four paws. And sometimes the things buried in darkness are the very things meant to lead us back into the light.